Hello there. Today I'm going to talk about my song Disappearing. Disappearing is off my album Parting Ways. All the songs on Parting Ways are about grief and friendship and inspired by the death of my friend Lee back in 2019. This is, if not the first, then the second song I wrote for the album. And it's a bit of a sad one. I was invited to be part of a digital residency, whatever that is. It was kind of lockdown-y type times, based on grief. And it was lots of artists who were using grief in their practice. There were some playwrights and there were some fine artists, etc. And what would happen is we would meet in the morning and have a bit of a kind of chinwag about stuff, and then we'd all go off and do our bit, do things, and then we'd kind of share them at the end of the day and kind of check in at the end. And this is one of the songs that I wrote this song while I was doing that. And I found lots of people, I was quite inspired by people doing work about grief, and it kind of made me feel sort of oddly less lonely in doing it. And gave me, I think, the permission to be more selfishly emotional than I ultimately ended up being on the rest of this record. The rest of this record is very much, I think, about, okay, these are things maybe you could do in response to how I feel, as opposed to this is how I feel. I don't know if that makes sense. But anyway, this one, as soon as I had that realisation, it was like, okay, I can afford to be wildly specific now. Just after Lee died was, you may or may not remember, COVID-y times. Do you remember COVID? Oh, crazy, right? And it was lockdown, and one of the things that happened in lockdown was me and my wife needed to start, educating our children. And I was one of those really nerdy homeschool dads, where the kids were getting sent home work from school, which just had them sat on a laptop separately, and I was like, I can't do that. They can't just sit on laptops, all that's awful. So I started kind of taking the reins of the homeschooling and coming up with things that they could do together as part of it. So I created these theme weeks, and we had a theme week that was all about directions, and we learned about maps and coordinates, and we kind of did geocaching, and we did loads of stuff. Did maths based on how far away different things were and things like that. It was cool. I really enjoyed it. And but one of the weeks was about time travel, right? And it was just about time. It was getting them to be able to tell the time, read clocks, and understand, essentially a lot of it was about organisation, talking about how you timetable your day. But time travel kind of made it more fun. And we had this big string in our then dining room that we pinned all of our family members onto it as to where they were born, so they could kind of visualise this idea of time. And anyway, how can you do a week-long homeschooled topic on time travel and not watch Back to the Future? Okay? Kids haven't seen Back to the Future. And so we're like, right, we're going to watch Back to the Future, it's what we're going to do. And at this time, one of the things that I was dealing with in losing Lee was this weird relationship with memory. So many of the memories that we have, you have because they're sort of kept going by another person. So whenever I'd see Lee, that he would say, do you remember so-and-so? And I go, oh, yeah, I do. But if he'd not asked me that question, I wouldn't have. They'd have drifted out of how I remember that. And with him no longer being there, and him, and so many of my teenage experiences and memories being held by us, as soon as he wasn't holding a handle of that bag, I started to realise I was going to lose them. It was going to be really hard for me to remember them. And I was thinking this whilst I was watching Back to the Future. And at the end of Back to the Future, you've seen Back to the Future, right? There's the bit where he's playing the guitar, but because he's not going to exist, his hand starts disappearing. And I was like, right, okay. That's what it feels like. I feel like I'm disappearing. That version of me is disappearing. And Back to the Future is so entwined with my teenage years anyway, as it is Lee's, right? That is a film about teenagers to some extent. They're all at high school, And so I was like, that would be a really good prism through which to look at this. And originally it was called This Is Heavy. In fact, I can prove it was called This Is Heavy because look, here it is. Here's the actual songwriting book. It was called This Is Heavy because a load of In Back to the Future, he keeps going, oh, this is heavy, dog, this is heavy. And it is heavy, right? But I ended up changing it to disappearing for all kinds of reasons. But anyway, I then came up with this. I was going. I think it was. I was talking to Mal because no one else was talking to me because it was lockdown, right? And I think I said to her specifically, it's like in that photo from Back to the Future. I'm disappearing. And now and again, and I remember saying it and going, that is actually the clearest way to express what I'm trying to express. So I'll just sing that. And it became the first line of the song. And then it was a case of remembering other points across the Back to the Future franchise where things start to disappear. All right? So I've got the words here. Like in a photo from Back to the Future, I'm disappearing. Because you anchored the man that I was, so who am I now? Torn limb from limb. The hand you held, the shoulder you cried on, the neck where you rested your chin when we said our goodbye, it's all disappearing. So each verse kind of resets with this, we're talking about film, and then we're talking about me, and then it's getting emotional, but we're talking about film. I stole that idea from the song I Get Along Without You Very Well. Do you know that song? It's a beautiful song. It's basically, the first line of every verse is, I get along without you very well, except when soft rain falls, and of course then I'm absolutely broken. You know, that would break my heart. But I get along without you very well. Like, it's this idea of resetting. It feels quite theatrical storytelling. And then the second one, like when Marty McFly plays guitar. So the first one's about the photo, where the characters are disappearing. The next one is the guitar one, yeah? A bit I love about this is because the him that he is in that moment has never been born. Bone by bone, the double thumbs, we always used to do that, we saw each other, the scissors and paper, we had this ludicrously overcomplicated routine where if we were in the background of a scene in a play, we would do this thing where we would pretend to play rock, paper, scissors, but we had a learned order that we'd do it in, so it was always a draw. And it was ridiculous. I don't know why we did it, but we thought it was hilarious. So we'd kind of go, and we'd do it, and we'd just do it on this cycle. And it was sort of a complicated enough order in which people wouldn't guess that that's what we were doing. It was very stupid and childish. Anyway, I said I was allowing myself to be specific, so hey, there you go. The limbs that we let loose to dance like there was no tomorrow. Nothing we enjoyed more than getting drunk at a wedding and dancing the night away. And then I had the third one, which is the bit where Doc finds his gravestone and his name is disappearing. Now, so I wrote the three stanzas before I wrote the middle section, so I'm going to come on to the middle section in a bit. But all the bit at the end, the bit about, but at least he can call his best friend and jump in the car and step on the gas till the hands of time turn back around. Like, it was only at the point when I came up with the Doc bit that I went, oh yeah, they were best friends as well. Of course, they can just help each other. And I can't, it's another way of getting it back to friendship. The middle section of this song was a really lovely moment, and I shall tell you for why. Because I had forgotten that the first time I saw that film, I saw it with Lee. And I was off on this thing about time travel in general, about, well, what if things had changed when I went back, in it, you know, exactly like happens in Back to the Future, you know. But then I was hit by this memory. I remember we got there really early to the Davenport cinema, I'll have you know. And so we were killing time while the queue, you know, while we waited for the queue to die down. And we were just mucking about. And the fact that we'd actually seen the film together was then like, right, it's all of the, you know, it was like that bit in The Matrix where, you know, he picks up the bullets, you know. But yes, it's the first piano ballad on the record, and I sort of feel it my responsibility to do a piano ballad on every record. There's actually two on this one. There was a period where I tried to put instrumentation to this song, and my God, did it fail. I've got an MS-10, it's like an old synthesizer, and it kind of goes, I can do these kind of cool noises with it, and I can sometimes program it like a really weird string section, so I was like, oh, I'll try and do that. And I tried to do that, and I spent a full day on it, and I sat down the next day, hit spacebar, and went, yeah, that's awful. So I got rid of it. I love playing this song live. It's very emotional, and it is so specifically, I think of all the songs on the record, it is so incredibly specifically about me and Lee, and me and Lee. It's not a surprise that this was one of the first songs that I wrote. It's odd. So there was a period where this whole record I was going to write about the stages of grief. I was going to do a song about each one, but it just felt incredibly, I don't know, it felt a bit cold. It didn't feel very emotional. And one of the things I've learned in my grief process is that it isn't an order. It's just not. Like, you know, or it's certainly not been in my experience. Everyone is welcome to have their own last year. I don't wish that on anybody, but you know what I mean. Yeah, this was, I kind of almost had to write this song so that then I could write the other songs, if that makes any kind of sense. This is a song that I've had 4 or 5 different messages from people, you know, 6 months or whatever since the album came out, going, oh, that song's just hit me. Like, I just got it. And it's broken my heart. Which is a weird thing to be proud of, right? But this is not a very showy song, this, at all. It takes a few listens to kind of get your head around what I'm trying to do. It's musically complex as well. It's very old-fashioned. It's an AABA song, so there's like verse, middle section, verse. I love writing those songs. It's a very old-fashioned way of writing, but I'm a big fan of them. I change key really aggressively in the middle section for the simple reason that I love how it feels when I then change back into the verse. I remember the bit about, imagine if I could turn time and turn hands around, then I'd see the flowers turn to buds, turn to seeds in the dirt. That line that was trying to express the idea of how I could travel back through time, I wrote that when I was running one day. And I was running through this field where I'd been running through lockdown and I'd seen them planting the seeds growing, them flowering and then dying again. Like, it was this really weird like expression of time that I was seeing. And that felt like a really good visual to express how time was turning back. So whenever I sing that line, I always remember this particular field where I was. But yeah, there you go. That is the song Disappearing. It's a sad one. Should I have called it This Is Heavy? I don't know. I almost called it the Back to the Future one. I've played this a few times and people afterwards have said, I haven't even seen Back to the Future. And I'm like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Why are you coming to a gig and you've not seen Back to the Future? It's like a perfect movie, right? Anyway, listen, that's their problem, not my problem. Thank you very much for listening. You can hear the song Disappearing in lots of different forms. You can listen to it on Spotify, Apple Music, buy it on CD, all the places. Hope you've enjoyed this, and I'll see you soon. Thanks, bye!
Like in that photo from Back to the Future, I'm disappearing.